#1 seed in Korea. And while not as dominant as SKT, have been able to come into this tournament as the favorites. And we didn't know it was going to happen in this pick and ban phase. Already some stuff flying through.
Yeah, we expected a lot of mid lane bans here, honestly, because the mid lane champion pool has shaped up to be very distinctively tiered. It's Syndra at the top, then Ryze right below, and then Aurelion Sol if you don't play it. SKT don't really play Aurelion Sol themselves, and Rox have shown that they could actually whip it out. That's why we see these 3 mid lane bans already.
Yeah, and I was also curious what was going to happen with the jungle bans, because in the semifinals when these teams played against EDG and RNG, there were several bans thrown at the team's junglers. But in this case, if you were going to throw bans at a jungler, you're also kind of banning out yourself. So in this sense, aside from Nidalee, all the available junglers are here, and I think Rox is an exceptional team with Elise. I just don't know if it's worthy of a first pick here.
Yeah, and honestly, the only surprise ban here really is that Ezreal on blue side from the Rox Tigers. I think they're actually happy that Jace has been taken off the board because they get the Caitlyn first pick. They're trading it for a lot of power picks. There's so many strong picks left. Even think of a Kennen right now on the 3rd rotation in this pick and ban because there's so many must-haves, like a Zyra, like an Olaf, early on as well for SKT.
And that's the thing when you're looking at these two teams' champion pools. They share so much. And I would say throughout the quarterfinals, Caitlyn really emerged as one of the dominant picks since being able to get priority in the bottom lane was so high. Here, you wouldn't be too surprised if they do pair Caitlyn with the Karma, but they can wait on that since SKT has already locked in their support in Zyra.
And this is so surprising to see the early poppy from Rox, because you expect Smeb to be the carry. He could lock in an early Kennen, an early Rumble, and try and dumpster the top lane. However, if he takes away the one high-tier safe pick in that poppy, then Duke has to dig in lower tiers of champions to find a counter. Yes, he could play the Trundle, but in a tournament meta game, this is actually a good steal.
I actually think that's a very interesting strategy by Rox, and I know a couple of weeks ago Smeb said how much pressure he was under to be hailed as the #1 player in the world coming in, and he's refocused into figuring out how to make his team the #1 team in the world. So the Poppy pick definitely speaks more towards that strategy.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's one thing that I absolutely love about people that have been the best in the world. A player I like for this is Pawn way back on Samsung White 2014, who was, I thought, the best mid lane in the world at the time because you could play so many different styles and being able to hard carry on a Kennen. We saw the highlight reel earlier in the day. Also, this Poppy, who's a great tank, great flanker, great engage tool, and bringing out both of these styles coming in for Smeb should be a treat to watch.
Yeah, and I do like the fact that Duke has picked Trundle most likely for the top lane because that is a matchup where Trundle will win in an extending laning phase, and it takes away the pressure from that lane for the Rox Tigers aside from teleport
It
play.
is the expected pick into Poppy, but it is a pick that has seen barely any play in the tournament because there were so many of the likes of a Rumble available. But we have to move on because this pick and ban is going so fast. And we see an Ashe here all of a sudden, a champion that hasn't been played at all. If you would expect an Ashe pick in the Rox SKT matchup, you would expect it on Phreak because he's a fantastic Ashe player. But it does seem that Rox has done their homework with the Ezreal ban. It does seem like SKT is not leaning towards Jhin as a standard counter pick to Caitlyn.
Which is kind of remarkable because Jhin has a pretty strong laning phase when you're considering it into Caitlyn, and the Zyra Jhin is just exceptional synergy and kill pressure. But obviously SKT has some other things in mind. They do like to mix things up fairly often in the first game of a best-of-5 to kind of feel the opponent out and almost give them a lot of the things that you would be fearful of. And they're definitely mixing things up with that Ashe.
And one great thing that comes with banning 3 mid laners out in total, 2 on the side of Rox and then the Aurelion Sol forced to be banned by SKT, is that the mid lane champion pool gets pinched. And the more you pinch the mid lane champion pool, the more likely it becomes for Viktor to be able to get through the power trough in the early game, which is the 1 through 6. Faker has to offer an answer here to this Viktor, and it's going to be a relatively slow scaling pick in the Orianna. So that's fine for Kuro to survive in lane.
Yeah, it's a very interesting pick and ban phase here for SKT. When I'm looking at it, it wouldn't be Worlds without Orianna, and Orianna is actually one of Faker's most successful champions as far as how many games he's played on it of all time, so not too surprising to see it come through here. But I was expecting a pick with a little bit more teamfight presence like a Cassiopeia, but that's just not what we see.
Yeah, and if you're wondering why we see Ashe back, Ashe has always historically been a good matchup into Caitlyn because she has poke advantage, she has a decently high range herself, doesn't really get contested too easily by Caitlyn. Combine her with Zyra, we've seen this lane matchup time and time again in the past. Season 3 was all about Ashe and Zyra all day, poke you 24/7, super annoying to play against. And honestly, with the resurgence of Zyra, we can actually see more and more Ashe come back as well.
Absolutely agree. It makes for a very strong lane. Of course, we've seen it forever, and it provides everything you kind of need, especially when you're not playing a high utility top lane like a Trundle. And Olaf as well is just kind of there to be a ball of stats. The engage tools have to come out of something, and an Ashe into a grasping root's not too bad. The disengage tools are there with Pillar and Strangle Thorns, and you've got a great mix of long range damage, high damage uptime, and some utility in there as well. Now we are getting ready for game one of these semifinals, the best of 5 here in front of us. We have 3 to 5 hours of League of Legends entertainment coming at you tonight here from New York City. Rox Tigers and SK Telecom T1, hashtag RoxWin, hashtag SKT win. The Summoners Cup is on the line and will be handed out in about 9 to 8 days time based on which team makes the final and which team can make it all the way there. Now it is time for game one of 2 South Korean juggernauts, SK Telecom T1 and Rox Tigers. Hit the rift right now.
So exciting to finally see this matchup once again. And we always have to talk about the early game, especially in this tournament, and track the junglers early, because that's where the most mind games come in. It's actually been a while since we've gotten to see a good Elise versus Olaf matchup, since we've seen a lot of these things banned out against each other. Typically, the Olaf is picked before the Elise, because at a certain point in the game, Olaf can just turn on the ultimate, run and kill Elise. But before the level 6 mark comes in, Peanut can be very strong.
Yeah, we also need to look at the power of pushing lanes, because this world's very much so is dominated by looking at draft and seeing, you know, who has the 2 or 3 winning lanes in the early game. If you look at that, SKT is not doing too shabby in that regard. Ashe Zyra can always challenge this Karma Caitlyn. Will be a skill test though.
Really nice plant spawns there for Wolf. Gorilla's going to be fine. He'll regen it back up, but obviously he's free gold.
And these guys are just posturing, because the first one to get to the minion wave, that's what matters. Hitting those creep as early as you can without taking too much poke back. Very important.
Ooh. And if Bang is consistently able to land these volleys, it's going to go a pretty long way in cutting through the health potions, because there isn't sustain in this lane. So being able to get the early poke can stop them from being able to push in.
Here we are, landing phase begins. We're watching the bottom lane pretty heavily, and Phreak actually using his first Q not on the minions at all, but looks for Bang, who dodges it away. And it will still take until the next wave for the level 2 to really come through, but you're seeing that Rox especially, they're focusing their damage output on the champions themselves. They're not really interested in wave clearing so heavily right now. It's all about the second wave when that happens.
Yeah, and we also have to track if a lane does get a shove advantage, if they can get a deep ward in the jungle, because as soon as one of these teams know where the jungle is tracked, they can completely change the way they play the lanes.
But you can look at Wolf, he was fine taking all that damage early on, because his priority was just to get the lane push. SKT have slightly more control in the bot lane right now, but not much will happen here. It's all about tracking the junglers and see where they strike first, because they're going into different directions.
Yeah, and there's a lot of mind games that go on here, actually. Peanut has historically been incredibly aggressive on Elise, so Bengi is actually very worried about an Elise coming to kill him at his red buff, which is why Faker is scouting the Raptors right here, and he actually hasn't seen Peanut because he skipped to red buff. So there's a good chance they think he's somewhere else.
Yeah, small mistake from Faker on that steal right now too. Peanut skipped his Raptors too. He doesn't reveal, so he could definitely go bot lane. He looks to be pinging the dragon, so he wants to repel over the wall and bypass a potential ward.
Exactly. This is so clever for Peanut. Right now, SKT thinks Peanut is topside. They see him on the ward, they have to run.
And here's the escape. He knows he's been spotted by a ward at this point, watching Bang and Wolf run around and say, okay, there's a ward somewhere in that bottom delta of the river. Keep that in mind for Peanut. And yeah, he's going to take the Scuttle as his prize. And he could take Gromp if he knew it were up, but instead, it's actually Bengi who now has the Fog of War advantage.
That is one thing about Peanut, though. He doesn't waste time looking for ganks. If it doesn't work on in the first 5 or 10 seconds, he bails immediately, keeps the uptime. He's a very high-tempo jungler.
Yeah, and I also want to compliment the ward placement of SKT right there, placing it up in the river instead of in the tri-brush, because they were expecting if Peanut could make a way in there, that he could traverse the dragon wall. So actually very well played by SKT, even though they didn't have knowledge until very late.
You can see the players really trying to play with vision. The Wolf Smite says, hey, Bengi, get out of my jungle, and this is the stun. That is dangerous. Now Duke is here for the escort, and that's a really nice pillar as well. Keeps Smeb from coming in on that one, and it's an easy escape.
And that's obviously the power of getting the counter picked and the early pressure in the lane. The fact that your top laner can peel off, despite the enemy top laner being closer technically, Duke is there first. He beats Smeb to that invade, and at least helps his jungle not getting collapsed upon.
These battles are always so close, right? It's a bunch of long-range damage. You can put out plenty of damage if left unanswered. And you see Wolf, Bang, Prey, Gorilla, all of them just doing the very best they can to get what damage output, and you've noticed that there's a health advantage. Bang still has his potion on this Ashe. He's been able to play so safely. Frey down below half, Gorilla the same.
It's basically because Wolf has been looking for one thing. That's whenever somebody locks in an auto-attack animation, he hits both the creeps and the champion that is trying to last it at the same time. And if you back out of that poke, well, you're going to lose the last hit. Wolf has been very adamant about the poke early on. Yes, it cost him all his potions, but it got him the lane control, which means they can base whenever.
And also, how many times have we seen this at 4 minutes and 50 seconds where the enemy jungler is 10 CS up on Peanut? Peanut's path was very aggressive early because he wanted to get a surprise gank in the bottom lane. It didn't work. Bengi had chose to power farm, and he got a counter jungle in. So everything is working out very well for SKT here in the sense that their lanes are pushing and their jungler is out farming Peanut.
Yeah, and that is obviously the difference if you look at this matchup and when Rox played EDG. EDG was lacking in terms of reaction. They always got caught on the play, and a lot of these proactive plays by Rox Tigers, they stuck, and they resulted in kills and pressure. Right now, SKT, they are the best team at being reactive and looking at what's going on. But another gank attempt here from Peanut, but look at the respect. Bang and Wolf, they don't pass the invisible barrier. That's kind of the do not cross line for ganks.
Yeah, you can even see the way Bang positions when the wave is gone. He walks up towards river to see what was happening. And the other point to talk about the failed gank, Jatt, is that's preparation as well. It's SKT looking at the old Rox Tigers game, seeing what some of Peanut's gank patterns are, seeing that he likes to jump over that dragon pit and saying, we're going to make sure we ward for that 3-minute gank. The ward's there, no shock, no kills.
Yeah, and they're just tracking him so well. But on top of that, the Ashe Zyra lane has been quite effective against Gorilla and Phreak. Caitlyn was first picked by Rox, so when they do that, they're expecting priority around the bottom side. And even though Peanut hasn't completed ganks in the bottom side, he has approached it twice, which is a pretty high cost in the grand scheme of things, and it hasn't amounted to any advantages so far for Rox.
Yeah, that's why historically we see so few ganks in poke lanes, because they're so good at playing max range. All you need is a ward in river. You don't pass too deeply into the lane. But what we've seen in this early game is just the amount of information you get off a single deep ward. They spotted Peanut early on his Raptors. They knew the jungle would be relatively empty. He either had two choices, base and delay himself, or go for a quick gank. That's why they always respect it. Right now, Peanut looking for more pressure in the top lane, taking down a pink ward. Right now, it's a vision game. It's about just getting a few wards in the enemy jungle and see if you can outmaneuver your opponent on the Rift.
Yeah, and also the longer this game is able to stay in this fairly neutral sense, the better it is for SKT. Peanut, though, through the pink ward, trying to brute force Duke, but he's level 6. That's an incredibly difficult Trundle
Is the stun as well. It's Peanut who pulls aggro first. He will juke away eventually and does so. Of course, the King's Tribute is on, but now Kuro's in the mix as well, missing the death ray, but still, he's got the ulti on, and now Duke's gonna run out of help, but he flashed away in time to knock us back by Smeb's ultimate, and Duke will get away with his life, but it does mean a lot of pressure in the top lane, and the turret will lose a lot of health.
Yeah, action means reaction right here. The crossmap from SKT, they have Faker in the mid lane who could peel off, but he actually wants to get more CS and chip damage in the mid lane. Faker is 20 CS up in the mid lane already.
And for a team that we credit for being so fast, has been a step behind in the early game right here. That gank has to arrive before Duke hits level 6. Otherwise, he can just use the ultimate and absorb 3 people top lane. That gives Bengi a bigger lead, it gives Faker a bigger lead, and it gives SKT a nearly 1,000 gold advantage.
And you can see SKT trying to play with more than just the gold, but the tempo lead. They took over the bottom jungle. They're fighting for the red buff, and you can see that's going to be the red taken away by Wolf, and Peanut's now got to be a little bit afraid of the fact that everyone's coming by. And that Ashe arrow from Bang could have secured first blood for SKT. Thankfully for Rox, they were able to get away.
And that's the thing of going for very telegraphed plays. They come at a cost that you may not see immediately. While that gank was going on in the top lane, we saw an invade in the bottom side of the map. Bengi and Wolf walked in. They placed 3 deep wards, then pressured the bot lane, which meant that there was complete information of what was going on Peanut's red side jungle. The second he came back from that gank, that failed attempt, he walked bot into an ambush, and he felt himself threatened again, continuously under pressure.
And this is allowing Bengi to do a lot of work on the map. Who expected Bengi to be doubling Peanut's CS at 8 minutes and 30 seconds? That was unthinkable based on how they've been performing so far in this tournament.
It's the power of pre-game preparation. SKT saying, we only need 1 ban in an early round Olaf. We know you'll go Elise, and we know how your release works. We've read this book. We know the story. Page 3 is you gank bottom, and we're ready for it.
But it's also the power of in-game adaptation and using a little bit of information and then extrapolating so much more from it.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing. Being able to catch that one glimpse of Peanut on the bottom side and realizing that if he was to do that path and sneak past those wards, it must be this way. And therefore, Bengi was immediately able to punish it. It enables the rest of the lanes to play up. And also, Faker being able to stay in lane while Kuro gave that roam gives SKT a lot of winning positions.
gonna see that 1,000 gold lead. Bottom still pushing in. Both AD carries got reasonably good recalls. They've actually got practically identical items, but now you're seeing the turret start to take some damage. SKT have the wards they need to feel comfortable now that Peanut's not going to sneak in quite as easily.
And that's the thing. Because they were able to get deep wards in the jungle of Peanut, he completely loses the element of surprise. We heard Kobe talking about all the mind games he's able to play. He can only execute those if his team has pressure. That's what's been giving Rox Tigers these amazing games in the LCK, is because so many of their lanes play aggressive, they can take over the map and allow Peanut to run around in secret. But that's not what's happening right now.
It's also very dependent on draft. Nobody would have actually predicted there to be a lane that could challenge, I think, a Caitlyn lane in push. After she gets early locked in, this Ashe Zyra is a bit of a surprise here. Because usually Caitlyn Karma should be able to handle the push in most matchups, even if there's a Zyra present.
But goodbye Bang, and he's playing very well on this Ashe, and you've got to give a ton of credit to Wolf as well. The early pick Zyra, we know right now she seems to be the queen of bottom lane supports, and Wolf playing it very acutely.
Yeah, and SKT with the Orianna mid and this Ashe Zyra that they're very well practiced on in the bottom lane have two pushing lanes, which allows them to take control of the bottom side of the map. The natural counter to that was what Rox did. They were just a little slow. You send 3 people to the top side and you snowball Smeb. But credit to Duke and the rest of SKT for absorbing that gank and allowing the rest of the map to win early on.
Honestly, the fact that Duke survived that meant so much for this game. Again, bot lane vision, we talked about it earlier. We can now start looking at these comps a little bit later as the game obviously slows down. There's a lot of river wards. Junglers are generally tracked. Nobody's going to really overextend. SKT and Rox are both playing a comp that likes playing 4-1, so the winning side lane is so important in that nature. So having a Trundle later on versus the Poppy is super important.
Yeah, even if Poppy were to get 20 or 30 CS up on Trundle, by the time the late game hits, Trundle will have that pushing lane. But that's why Smeb's roaming in.
Got this coming in, the flash to push him back, but it's not going to be the cocoon, and the shockwave buys all the time Faker needs. 1v3, easy escape, 2 summoners down, but he's okay.
And that is the second gank that SKT has been able to absorb. 3v1. 3-man ganks are very high rates of success, but they've been able to stop both of them.
Yeah, credit to Faker for doing exactly what he needed to do, but we also have to criticize Rox. Usually when you surprise an opponent 3v1, there should be a scenario that leaves your opposing mid lane with 0 escape options, even if it is Faker.
I absolutely agree with that one. It almost feels like Rox is playing a little bit jittery. They're trying to make these plays, but SKT is just sitting there. And Bengi needs to be able to take this CS advantage and transition it into a larger lead. So often we see SKT with a 1,000 or 2,000 goal lead and think, the game is over, because they are so good at playing with these leads. We'll see if they can do it against the best opponent in the Rox Tigers.
And then we definitely have to track how did they do that. Well, step 1 is obviously whenever somebody reveals himself, deep wards, 2 deep wards in the jungle, pressure in mid. They're not here to kill Kuro, just here to move him away from the turret and keep chipping away. This mid lane turret already so low, 13 minutes in the game. 2 wards in the enemy jungle. SKT continuously playing forward.
Against a Viktor, no less, who especially once he gets Hex Core upgrades is incredibly difficult to push in towards. Getting 3/4 of that turret now means one small misstep in the mid lane would mean first turret, and they're trying to get that misstep with his Ashe arrow.
Trying to make the steps, not going to land them just yet. Rox able to tiptoe around them without too much problem, but it is Faker pushing up now without any summoner, so a slow and a lot more damage into the evaporation. First blood in for Smeb, and the fight continues. Bengi throws the undertow, but he's running for dear life. Smeb with immaculate timing lands the knock of the follow-throughs there. 2-0 for Rox.
And Rox never quit trying to make the play. They consistently sent more and more people at SKT, and even if they failed the first 2 ganks, because SKT wasn't making proactive plays, eventually it works for the Rox Tigers, and now they have the lead.
And this is exactly why Rox Tigers is considered a tournament favorite. They keep the pressure up, even through failure. Look at Faker, get so down and nowhere, then bang into the wall. Follow Smeb here as he gets the perfect timing on Bengi out of that Ragnarok. Right now he gets out and he gets knocked up. What a good predict there. And then honestly, they get an elemental fire dragon after it. Infernal goes down and suddenly the game is even again.
That's the funny thing though, it's 2 for 0 in kills and the game is only even in gold. SKT have been so good at absorbing the pressure and trying to bring it a little bit later than 2016 Rox is seemingly comfortable with. Under the shockwave now into Kuro, half HP on him, the shield's gonna time out and Faker looking for just a little bit more, and he's not quite gonna land it. Nice sidestep getting away from Cocoon, out goes Kuro.
You can just tell how good Faker's at sidestepping things. He's moving his mouse so close to his champion model right there. Immediate reaction from Bengi too. He knows the mid laner's out of the fold. Even if that play fails, the goal is just to chunk the enemy mid laner and create pressure on this turret.
SKT is attempting to win a war of attrition right here by consistently just getting the lanes pushing. Even though Rox is throwing gank after gank at them, SKT is hoping to take control of the map via their lanes and then have a very solid and structured team fight composition.
Yeah, pressure top lane, bot lane, and in the mid lane. Faker aggressively using his spells just to send Kuro back in the base, allowing for Bengi to move in, leverage that CS advantage. Rox is under so much pressure, and without the teleport, they have to hang on. I don't think they're gonna fall super far behind.
Relentless pressure mid from Faker.
First turret of the game, despite being ganked several times over the course. It's SKT back with an 1,800 gold lead. It's Faker somewhat solo killing the mid lane turret. He got some help from Bengi earlier on, who has been farming up a storm and pushing the lanes as he needs. SKT in the advantage. Peanut will get away from Stranglethorns, but he's now on top of two members of SKT, looking for a bit more damage. Stun finds Gorilla. Wolf does not yet has Grassroots available, and a great flash gets Gorilla away from the shockwave, but now Duke is back in the mix, and the Strangling Thorns are there, and it's one more hit to do it, and Duke gets the kill thanks to the King's Tribute. And you can see this now, 1,700 gold ahead, SKT with the first kill of the game.
But yeah, that is one kill for SKT while burning their teleport advantage. Poppy whacking away in the top lane tower. If Smeb can equalize, Rox isn't too unhappy with this play.
Yeah, the turret is actually quite low in the top lane. I think Duke will be able to hold it, but that means the next time he leaves, that turret would go down. Watching this one more time, they just catch Peanut on a ward, and it's again because the vision controls were able to start.
And they're just challenging. They know people want to challenge for that pixel brush. It is the first step in vision control in the river. Peanut had a really good repel though that soaked up two ultimates, and Duke comes in swinging, but this is all for support. Two flashes burned right there.
Yeah, the timing might work out okay though. Of course, the dragon was killed not terribly long ago, so it's a reasonably long respawn at this point. You can see Duke back in the battle with Smeb. They're equal level. Smeb takes a sidestep to grab the shield, keep himself as healthy as he can, but look at the damage up that Duke can have. Of course, plenty of innate sustain on this Trundle. He should be pretty healthy when they fight again.
Yeah, he still doesn't have his ultimate though, so he has to be a little bit careful. I think he felt safe aggressing there because Smeb was fairly low on mana and because he has Bengi waiting behind him. They actually are probably trying to bait a gank of some kind right now. He will be able to sustain up if he gets to stay in the lane, but he was kind of putting himself in a position where the gank would be appealing for Peanut.
And look at Faker. He pushes out mid lane, helps his support get vision in that Tribush, killing away the pink wards, then moving out again, back to mid. Push out the lane, deep vision again, rinse and repeat. Keep playing that war of attrition that Jatt mentioned until somebody breaks.
Yeah, and with the mid lane turret being down, the next turret you would expect would probably be the bottom lane, since that's where SKT has devoted most of their attention this game. And there's also a small synergy we do have to mention with the Olaf. A lot of times you think it's weaker if you don't have the karma to synergize with it, but I think Orianna is somewhat of an enabler for Olaf, especially in team fights, to help speed him up even more and make him even more tanky.
Definitely agree, and so far it's been so good with Bengi working alongside Faker quite well. SKT have continually tried to find subs for Bengi. Last year it was Tom, this year it was Blank, and in the big important matches, Bengi still seems to show up and play very well right now. In this game, he's doing excellently against arguably the best jungler in the world in Peanut. So far, Bengi's been great, and it is still SK Telecom T1 holding a solid lead in this one, 1,800 up.
Yeah, solid lead. Let's follow how they extend that lead. How do they close out the game? SKT very often praised as a team that you cannot give a lead too early. They started with vision on both sides of mid lane. They lost track of Kuro for a second though. Looking to use that spare time to equalize the turret lead here.
Yeah, this is interesting. They're going to hope to push him off the turret right here. He would have ultimate, which would make him hard to dive, but with the turret gone, they don't have to worry about it. That was never meant to kill. It was a very strong roam.
And even some of the plays from Kuro, you saw him waiting in the Tribush a little bit longer. I think they might have been baiting some kind of gank defense. Maybe Bengi shows up there to defend that turret for a bit, and they say, surprise, 2-on-2, we'll kill you anyway. Looks okay.
But this is also where SKT has been devoting their attention, down the bottom lane. Bengi trying to go at Peanut, but Gorilla roams in.
And Faker's coming though. They know Faker's there somewhere. That's why they're not committing to this play. Again, action means reaction. Kuro moves top, which means SKT moving to bot side jungle. Rox and Peanut in particular are doing their damn best to keep the vision out as best as they can because they need control of their own jungle first, because then they can move to proactive plays.
Getting rid of Bengi's ghost is actually very important as well. And Rox are also trying their best not to get pushed in the bottom side. Note the very early QSS on Phreak, because the Ashe arrow would be what SKT would try and set up a kill with. They're actually positioning Phreak in front of Gorilla, meaning he would be the Ashe arrow target. if it happens, he would QSS, get sped up, and be completely safe.
Yeah, it's very interesting watching how all the plays happen as well. Even thinking about the action to reaction, the top lane gank and the bottom lane jungle control that was coming in. Rox were able to time that push while the red buff was still after you take it, but hold on, it's Gorilla. A nice flash by Wolf getting away from Peanut's cocoon. That could have been death for him. Also, Drake's would have been aggroed and Bengi is on it.
But this is another play from SKT where the goal is not to kill, it is just to wound. Get them low enough on HP, get them out of the area, and hopefully force and rush an objective right here. But SKT decide to turn.
Oh, Peanut jumps in!
He's in a pretty dangerous spot, stuns up on a bang, but now being chased down by Bengi. This could be enough damage to trade one back, and they will find the Rox Tigers jungler. Now it's Duke running for a shockwave, not quite gonna land. They're missing plenty of CC, but it's still 2 kills picked up, and Duke is just too tanky. Smeb is now alone under the turret, will be running out of health, and it's Kuro to try to save the fight. Looks for Faker, does turn around 1, and Smeb will not be killed off. It's a 2 for 3. Rox finding a couple of kills to get again. Kuro nearly finds a third as well, but that turret has fallen down. It's still a positive play for SKT.
And it was looking so much better for SKT until the tail end of that fight where they overchase and give Smeb 2 kills. As Krepo was talking about, the wounds eventually accumulated into some kills. Bad repel there by Peanut.
Yeah, bad repel, he's too far up. We just see misalignment within the Rox squad. Look how far Kuro is away, because he was dealing with that mid wave that Faker had already pushed up. If SKT retreat right here, they win out so big, but Kuro, luckily for Rox, on the back end, deals so much damage.
Right there, they were caught trying to kill Smeb with the turret, and they weren't actually tracking Kuro's roam, thinking the fight was completely won because they had obliterated the first 3 so quickly. But Kuro definitely showing some strength on Viktor. Nice flash to get the flashes out of Bang Duke.
But another play in this game that shows you the value of lane priority, which means whoever pushes first gets to make the first action, leave the lane and do something. Right now, Rox, they don't want to play the pushing game anymore. That's why they just group as 5.
And even though they're down 2,000 gold, the second Infernal is so important. Ultimate's just now coming up for SKT. We're going to see a fight.
Duke in a good position, but Gorilla caught in the front, gets okay behind the wall. Now the re-engagement of Bengi popping his ultimate, 1,800 health on the Drake, and Peanut is still taking it. And then Smeb takes an arrow to the face with a shutdown in favor of Bang.
He's
but
got
Peanut
it!
lands the smite, so it is a loss. Oh, who warded that? Why would you? Wolf gives Peanut the escape by warding over the wall.
And Peanut had maybe 0.5 seconds to click there. He was spamming over the wall, hoping somebody for dear life would place a ward. There is an opportunity of counter Baron though. Smeb is dead. Peanut is chunked here. There is vision. Maybe they can use it as a bait.
Zyra does help take the Baron, but they got to be careful, especially if both goes down.
Also gives 300 gold to Kuro.
I mean, this is such a fast-paced game. It's so hard to catch up and actually analyze everything that's happening because both these teams are reacting so well to the state of the game.
Exactly, and getting the double Infernal Drake is just enough to keep Rox in the game.
Oh, mid laners assassinating supports. What is this, 2013?
Yeah, supports
It's Orianna, Ashe Zyra bottom lane. It's definitely 2013.
Korean mid laners punishing supports for overextending. Definitely 2014.
Watching this one more time. Yeah, this was so interesting because Peanut was stuck in the Drake pit right here. So SKT actually could have just run down for Peanut, and Faker was actually hoping that Rox followed in so he could get a shockwave.
Yeah, because he was stuck behind the trap wall there. Faker was trying to zone from behind the traps. Here we see the ward again. Good reaction from Peanut, honestly, going for that. But Faker was kind of stuck in the zone himself. He didn't want to walk in the trap because he could get one shot right there, but he was offering offensive pressure with that ultimate at the same time.
Yeah, and you also... I understand what Wolf was thinking by warding over the wall there. He's thinking there's 4 people on Rox over there. We could maybe kill them over the wall with Orianna. Let's just see them. But it completely gave Peanut the way out.
Slow into Kuro. Root's not quite going to land. Wolf might not have been able to land that regardless of how he aimed. Bengi actually losing the Banshee's Veil, getting tagged up. And you see Kuro's already finished his Hex Core. And the W stun is even better now. It sucks them all into the middle.
But we're approaching the point of the game where the Trundle will get much farther ahead of the Puppey than he used to do historically due to the changes on Quicksilver as well. You can no longer just get rid of that Trundle ultimate, meaning if it all goes to an all-in, Puppey is destined to lose. Usually on 2 items, Puppey used to be able to hold her own, at least against Duke, but once he gets the slow, or more slows from his item build rather, he can just 1v1 all the time on the side lane.
And I really like what's happening here from Rox, actually. SKT moved towards Baron to get vision control, and that gave Rox a free time to push in the mid lane. Because they have that QSS on to Prey, he's actually much more fearless in killing these turrets. He's not as strong in team fights, but if they can keep playing this long arm strategy to go up to the turrets and just poke them down, they're going to maybe swing their way back into this game.
And what's really important is what Rox Tigers have done up until the point where Duke eventually does outscale Smeb, because even if this Poppy is squishy, the utility is always there, and so the finesse of navigating the fights properly can still help Rox Tigers.
And the biggest thing we have to track in the mid game here is farm distribution, because many of these teams were playing 1-3-1 throughout the entirety of the season. It's very easy. Your mid laner moves to a side lane eventually, your AD carry goes mid, but when you're playing with a Viktor and an Orianna, both these champions like being mid in the mid game as well, which means they're contesting their AD carries for farm, or they're playing in a suboptimal lane on the top lane. That's why we see a Viktor Orianna top. This is a sight we haven't seen in absolute ages, and it's very delicate and much different to play. Requires good adaptation for the teams.
Exactly, especially because they're down some summoners right now, so they're kind of just waiting for the team to roam up there, and then they'd be able to turn a positive play. I actually think it was very dangerous for Faker to be up there, since he didn't actually have a turret behind him and they had very poor vision control. That's why he's pulling back right now.
And that's exactly why these champions just love the safety of the mid lane, but you can't leave an Ashe or a Caitlyn on the side lane either.
It's even worse for them.
Yeah, not with a melee, without a melee support to potentially protect them. These range supports don't peel that well on the side lanes.
Yeah, I think because of that, we're much more likely to see this develop into a 4-1, where they kind of trade who gets to see the last hits, whether it's the Caitlyn or the Viktor in the mid lane, or the Orianna and the Ashe, and you wait for SKT to have Duke pushing down the bottom side. I think the reason Rox is sending Viktor up there is because they know SKT wins the 4-1. So even though they have a composition that would normally be doing it, since they lose that 1-1, they're going to try and make it the 1-3-1 we were talking about.
And the precursor to a 4-1 is always, you got to fix your side lanes. It's important that you still respect that lane. You don't play on it endlessly, but you leave whenever you can. But these teams are so good at not getting caught in the mid game that they're just basically trading lanes in the top lane. It's one of the few lanes where you want to be catching instead of pushing right now. Look at Kuro. He wants to receive this as close to his turret as he can because he can get picked out. So at this stage of the game, it's honestly important to track the wards and the teleports. Both Smeb and Duke can suddenly surprise the opposing team if one deep ward gets snuck into the jungle.
Absolutely. The ganking from Smeb and Peanut is huge in Fog of War, whereas SKT wants to try and land an Ashe arrow for a pick, because the pick at this point either gives you Baron or that third Infernal Drake that's about to spawn.
That could be a very important thing to watch for. It's only 1 minute away, but Krepo, you mentioned the ward control and playing for that as well as the waves. Well, look at what's happening. SKT pushing in mid first, easily pushing in bottom first as well. So this bottom jungle's lit up red pretty easily, and the top river's also mostly SKT controlled. So in all these fronts, SKT are ahead on the play.
Yeah, it's because they're leaning both on their draft, which got them the favorable side lane, but also on the early game, which got them the gold lead and the control of the game here. That's why it's going to be so hard for Rox to fight their way out. The fact that they managed to get both those Infernals is honestly a feat of strength here, and this is why we can't underestimate Rox. Any other team, I'd say, you know what, SKT is probably going to choke out eventually. The Rox Tigers have shown that they don't care.
Exactly. It's been quite remarkable because SKT has had the pushing lanes for a lot of this game. Getting Faker's flash this early when he's running extremely low magic resist against Kuro means the teamfight's going to be very hard for Faker to enter. And I definitely think we're seeing a teamfight around this third Infernal Drake if SKT decides to go for it. If not, that's ridiculous. 24% attack damage and ability power is almost a win.
A lot of stats. Viktor and Caitlyn definitely want the extra ability power and attack damage. Those are the two primary carries of the squad. And it's Gorilla getting caught out with a chain of crowd control, and Wolf deserves the last hit for setting up that play with the grasping roots. Meanwhile, Duke's split pushing finally does pay off. SKT the first to get all 3 outer turrets, and in a 5v4 potential, could be very easy to get more.
But it is just a support, and the opposing support has used his ultimate, which kind of renders him useless anyways. So in that sense, it's not the worst for Rox, but their priority on Dragon is costing on the top side of the map. SKT used the Dragon as the lure, a bait to move Duke to the top lane. He gets not only one, but almost 2 towers, while SKT start Baron.
All the vision control is on the bottom side for Rox. They now see the Baron, but it's too late. They will get the third Infernal, but SKT gets the Baron.
The very important Baron to grab. SKT, I think, making the exact right play on the backswing of that catch on the mid lane. Rox maybe got the best they could have hoped for in the 5v4 that's laid on, but either way, at least a Drake isn't the worst.
This is actually extremely interesting because you can only get 3 Infernal Drakes in a game, so there is no way SKT is getting one of those for the late game. That means that with this Baron buff, they have to make this an important Baron power play because of the raw stats Rox is going to have in the late game.
But they believe, because this wasn't an accident, this wasn't just a haphazard Baron, this was planned, it was a bait and switch. Rox was leaning so much towards the side of the Dragon that SKT peeled away their laner from the bottom lane. They put Duke top, he took 1 tower, pressured the second, and then SKT just swept in and took a free Nasher. Just in that microcosm, sorry Phreak right there.
No, it's okay.
The 8% bonus versus the Baron buff is definitely worth it.
The Baron buff is absolutely better. These minions are going to be huge. And look at the power spikes they've got. Bang is on 80% crit chance. Faker's got a death cap and a void staff. The two major carries here, the mid lane and AD carry for SKT, are super huge right now. Plus Baron pushing, they can get so much.
I agree that they can make good use of this, but it is actually very out of character for SKT to put themselves on a clock, because they now have to make use of this Baron buff. They can't be as reactive as they would want to be. Yes, they have the item power spikes, but we're about to see SKT go for something big.
It was both a decision and a reaction because they already gave away 2 Infernals in a sense. But looking at what this Baron buff does for them, they can finally commit to this 4-1 style because the minions will stay alive long enough so that Rox can't instantly wave clear them. Viktor, fantastic at wave clearing versus non-Baron buff creeps. Right now, the siege can continue. Look at the pressure.
And let's not forget that SKT are sitting on a solid 7,000 gold at this point. They've been routinely out-farming, out-killing turrets. Of course, the Baron and the 2 subsequent turrets help as well. No surprise here, but it's SKT. Even once this all times out, Elder Dragons are nice, but 7,000 gold is better than 3 Elder Dragons. When this all does reset, SKT looking great right now, looking to siege top lane inhibitor.
Yeah, Rox, though, has pretty solid wave clear with the Hurricane, Caitlyn, and the Viktor, so until Duke gets some super minions on other turrets, they're not going to be able to break that inhibitor wall. They will seem like they're going to be able to get up to 6 turrets to 2, though.
Looking pretty easy. I don't want to say easy, but looking pretty controlled for SKT right now. Duke, though, does catch a stun, but is there much else that Rox can do? Duke turns back around to fight Smeb because the rest of SKT is still just pressuring. That mid lane turret is so low, and here's the attack from top.
Yeah, Bang just whittling away at the turret here next to the traps. Watch him go into Fog of War every time and threaten with the arrow as well. At every single moment, Rox Tigers have to be careful. Just an enchantment crystal arrow flying across the map.
That's going to be at the 6th turret. So 3 turrets taken with the Baron. The gold lead now, almost 9,000 this one. Also, 30 seconds still on the reset, plus whatever either Bengi or Faker has with the extended duration afterwards to get another full minion wave of Baron buff.
Yeah, specifically, we can track this Baron power play now. 4,300 gold, as well as the map pressure of the turrets, is the cost that SKT paid to essentially concede the 3rd Infernal Drake, because they, with the support kill and the pushing top lane, I think could have powered their way into an Infernal Drake, but then would have had to delay the Baron. I'm not necessarily willing to say it's the best call unless they can close this game out, because that could very well backfire if Rox can hold with Viktor and Caitlyn.
But I think they made the decision calculating in the fact that they had already made a few mistakes in giving up the first 2 Infernals. Essentially, they were already on a clock in terms of late game scaling. So they wanted to power through and accelerate the game, which meant usually you need 2 dragons, or 2 barons rather, to close out the game. Getting the first one early, having a gold lead that's large enough to keep control of the map so you can set up perfectly for the second one is likely what SKT wants to do. The second this one fades, it's about 3.5 minutes until the next Baron spawns. You're going to see SKT keep leaning to the left side of the map, get a couple pink wards in river, deep ward in the enemy blue buff jungle, and then defend that the entire time. Because look at how hard it is for Rox Tigers to actually face check forward with their comp.
Yeah, exactly. That's also because SKT is running a pick composition with the Zyra and the Ashe. So even if Rox has a triple Infernal Drake in a super late game situation, if SKT can maintain map control, I think they try and avoid fighting clean 5v5s and only get picked. Because with triple Infernal Drake, you don't want to face a team straight up 5v5, but they will have the gold lead regardless.
They're going to have the slow on Smeb, who tackles in towards Bengi, but is now running out of life rapidly down below 1,000. The knockup is there, and the final blow comes through. Bengi gets the kill. Yet the pick comes through. They didn't even need Ashe for it. It's up to Kuro playing a bit of wave clear, and looks like all is well. And SKT almost 10k ahead now.
And SKT's happy. They can keep the map tiny. They can play the game on 2 lanes, making it very easy to play 4-1. Keep the vision in between. Choke out Rox. You don't need sweepers if you have time. If they don't put a ward there for 3 minutes, you can just keep choking out the vision. Meanwhile, you challenge base. You don't have to, but it's an added bonus here for making that pick for SKT.
Even try to make this next one in 20 seconds on Smeb. Nice QS as Phreak gets out, and Bengi eats a cupcake, losing half his life, but SKT are okay to keep playing this a little bit longer. But as the minion wave goes out, they say, you know what, it might be time to reset. 35 seconds of the Drake spawn. Like to see SKT heal before they go for it.
Yeah, and also note how Rox Tigers need to really work if they want to get an initiation. It basically has to be Smeb flanking in with a good teleport ward. or Peanut landing a Miracle Cocoon on someone who can't break the CC. So SKT is in a good position here because they are better than any other team at controlling the fights that they take. And compositionally, they're set up to do that as well.
And Rox is in such a tricky position because they don't really want to move to that bot lane. They don't want to push it out far enough to add pressure. Any wave they push will bounce on that tier 1 turret. If they send Smeb to the bot lane, the remaining 4 members are so easily picked off, by those champions that you guys mentioned earlier, just an Ashe arrow on a non-QSS target. I think that's going to be a pick, but look at here. They're moving into the enemy jungle here. Might be able to surprise Kuro, but he at least has some wards.
Yeah, Rox at least gets to realize that those wards are dying, so they're aware there's someone of the sweeper running through their bottom jungle rampantly. Rox should be smart enough to know, okay, this is all warded, they've taken control of this, and I think Rox should have to cede at least that territory. Maybe they come down to the river, but they're fighting, okay, 3 Infernal Breaks versus a 9,000 gold lead, and it's SKT saying, we own this territory, and Rox don't even bother trying. They're playing for topside wards instead.
Yeah, SKT with another little bit of a bait and switch. They yielded the Baron area, give the vision up to get a free dragon. I don't think they value the dragon itself so much, but they don't want to give a potential of a 4 dragon elder to the Rox Tigers.
Yeah, and also the three Infernal Drakes will give Rox an advantage when they hit 6 items, because that pushes them over the item cap. For now, when you're talking about the items that SKT has versus the items and the Infernal Drake multiplier, you can still say SKT is winning because of the raw gold and power they have right now.
Provided, as you said, it does not go 6 items. If this does stall out, Rox catch up and then Eclipse, but that is still 15, 20 minutes away, and it is a soft clock, but it's one that I think SKT can punch through soon enough. You've got Bang with just the best items base that you could possibly get. He's probably about 40% more DPS than Prey if he just sit there getting.
Hey, they're starting Asher.
And it's Rox hoping for a miracle play. Look at what a rush on Baron. SKT are pretty far. You will have Duke coming in from the flank, but there's no steal in range. The arrow lands, and it's secure by Peanut. Now the 5-on-5. Bengi comes in, down to half HP, and it's going to be Duke kicked right back out. And Rox get away clean with the Baron.
Rox is so smart as a team. SKT was so confident of their vision control. They lost track of Baron for a second. Rox immediately punish.
And when you get the Baron as a team that is behind, you usually freeze the game, which is exactly what Rox want to do right now. Ridiculous that SKT had the gap in vision at Baron, recalled, and Rox knew exactly when to rush.
You could see how much it means for the game that Faker is camping in a brush, looking for a random pickoff, building or relying on the overconfidence of Rox, but Rox is playing so clean. And again, this is back going to their roots. Historically, what was their major strength at the time? It was going back in a game where they was initially a little bit behind and then fighting their way out with super clean macro. It was only this year that they become a super strong early game proactive team, but they definitely have that history left in them.
Sure, 80% of that lineup is still that same late game team. All that sort of elder experience is there. It all came from the cloud break that SKT took. Rox said, we're not going to fight you. We're going to play top lane river control, top jungle control. We're going to get the wards. And as soon as SKT resets, they say, but we have ward control. And Rox executes so beautifully. They had a 20-second window, and they went right through it. Now it's Rox Tigers saying, what gold can we get back? There's still an outer turret to take in the bottom lane, but they're saying, no, it's top jungle that we want. Red buff is spawning. Can they fight for it as Bengi aggroes it?
And late game, it's all about dodging damage in these team fights. The one weakness to Orianna is the fact that her ulti is flashable. So Faker will have a much harder time dealing continuous damage in these fights compared to Kuro, who can definitely surprise people with a quick ultimate.
And especially with the pace of this game right now, only being 5 kills to 8, the frequency of the big team fights is low, which makes the flashes be off cooldown when a fight does happen. So it makes Rox, it gives them the ability to outplay and potentially still win this game.
Definitely want to go back to that point that was mentioned earlier about the early QSS of Prey. It really has shaped Rox to play a much different way, with Prey honestly playing borderline confident. No QSS on Smeb though, but he can just dodge it.
Bang actually lodges it, and it's Bang running out of health, but now look at that. It's just too much damage to deal with. Smeb's trying to run away with his life, and he will do so. I think actually it was Duke's pillar that might have gotten him away from the Enchanted Crystal there, but with team members up top lane, it's a great repel out from Peanut, and that's going to be a turret going down. Bengi, then a half HP, and Wolf got slowed by the Chaos Storm, which means a flash out of the SKT support.
And who needs flash the shockwave when you can just repel it if you're Peanut? That was a really great play. It means SKT has less threat to push them off turret. They burned the Trundle ultimate and the Ashe arrow, so Rox can push with impunity for the next few seconds.
Get a little bit more out of it. That bottom lane wave is there. It will go down with no champions nearby. The local gold goes to waste, but they can still just try to group back up on bot lane tier 2. Hey, how convenient the blue buff spawned as well. Let's take that away from Faker. Kuro is running out of mana. He's going to be full enough by the time the team fight comes around.
And what a game. We saw initial 2 plays fumbled by Rox Tigers. They made their way back in. They got an Infernal Dragon. SKT took control again, had a good river fight. Rox took another Infernal Dragon. SKT made a great play, getting Baron. Well, Rox took another Infernal Dragon, and suddenly, at the end, turned it all upside down with that genius Baron call. What a game.
Exactly, which is also why I was saying it is out of character for SKT to put themselves on a clock like that. Even though it did put them in a position where they could make the plays to win the game, if Rox makes a play, suddenly they would have the advantage. Smeb trying to teleport in.
They're not quite going to get much for it. The home guard was there to tackle a minion to get a bit closer, but couldn't quite find his target. But the funny thing is, it was SKT getting a Baron for an Infernal Drake. Rox got Baron for a Cloud Drake. Everyone outside North America, you never make that trade. Who gets Cloud Drakes? And that's the world we live in now. And we mentioned, if the gold gets closer, Rox outscales with the Infernals, where that's starting to happen. The gold only 6K apart, and that's actually manageable at this point. Frey finally got 80% crit. He's basically online as far as Caitlyn goes. In fact, item for item, he's currently tied with Bang until Bang actually completes the Quicksilver Sash into Mercurial Scimitar. And mid laners are close too.
Now, both these teams are honestly getting into super late game mode. And their compositions get rewarded for kiting as well. Ashe, Zyra, Orianna, they all want to run backwards, just like Duke has to kind of run away. But look at it, bottom right there, there's Smeb flanking. So it might be a flash force here on Duke.
Gets a slow, it gets a little bit done, but now it's going to be maybe part of a re-engage, because look at this mid lane. It's SKT saying, you went top, we're going to go mid in there first.
Yeah, they know how long it takes to kill Duke, and they do not want to open up their inhibitors to a team that can split push and pick the way SKT can.
Elder's spawning, but instead of going for the Elder, SKT are going for the fake out, and they're running bot here. Rox Tigers expected this to be just Faker, but as they move towards the bottom lane, they may get surprised here by a pickoff.
They have to go the safe route.
Yeah, Prey knows to not walk too far into the brush. Bengi actually walked forward a little bit here, and you can see that still. The turret's picked up, and Kuro clutch gets the flash away just in time. A quick Roots coming in there as well, stopping down Prey and Gorilla. They don't find much.
Going for it.
There's a stun. There's a knock on the Wolf, and they're going to knock down him before he can do much of anything. So it's a 1-for-0 in favor of Rox Tigers. Bengi's ulti is down as well. There's no more chase to be had. But look at SKT always playing the map a little bit smarter. That top lane hip turret will be going down, making that score 8-5 in turrets. Any good team fight now at this point in the game, SKT can outright kill the base. And it's a risk now that Rox has to play with for the rest of this game.
I love the way these teams are influencing themselves, or each other rather, with these little map moves. It looked for a second that SKT was going for that Elder Dragon, set up the objective, defend the area, because their composition so strong if you have to walk into them. Suddenly they just move down bottom and get a turret, go for a pick. They force the flash on Kuro. Rox react, but they lose their top lane tower. SKT is playing the map on so many places at once. Rox, they find strength in numbers. They want to strike together. Surprise with a good engage.
Duke is a monstrous split pusher. They now have inhibitors open. The game is truly on a knife's edge because of the duration of death timers 42 minutes in, the power of the buffs that are about to spawn with the Elder Drake being alive and with Baron in 34 seconds. Anything could break this game wide open, especially if SKT group up and Rox can find a fight.
Yeah, the support's coming. Karma just not there yet. Only thing that matters right now is this Elder Dragon. SKT looking to rush it down, using the zone from Wolf. Look for him to put that
stolen so many objectives this world.
They're trying to keep out. Repel gets away from this time. He goes in for it, and it's secured by Bengi. That is a big deal. SKT, Shockwave, a shutdown. They've got 3 already. They're looking to kill absolutely everybody. Rox Tigers getting wiped off the face of the map. Smeb the only one alive.
SKT burns Kuro's flash in a previous fight. Faker gets him the next time. Bengi is clutch with the smite in the jungle, and that's most likely the game for SKT.
Yeah, Rox get lured into the trap. They tunnel so hard into the objective that they forget that they're running into an Orianna Trundle comp. Once near the pillar, it was the perfect ultimate from Faker, and that's it for SKT. They get the kill, they get the objective, and they run down the mid lane.
And poor Smeb can't do anything. The recall is stopped. SK Telecom T1 are a third of the way there as they take game 1 over Rox Tigers, looking to make it to the finals.
And what a way to start this series. A very back and forth game. interesting trades. A triple Infernal Drake team loses the game because SKT was maneuvering them around the map, making them late to fights time and time again. And finally, after so many Mr. Flash shockwaves, Faker lands one and the game is over.
And it was really beautiful. So many clutch points where the right decision had to be made. And that's not always the case that it was. I think there were some trades opted into that maybe could have been chosen differently. But either way, we had an amazing game, 42.5 minutes in length, where you had Rox Tigers fighting through a gold deficit almost the entire time. From the laning phase, Bengi was always half SKT's gold lead by getting all the farm that Peanut wasn't getting because Peanut's ganks weren't landing. You had just general laning phase leads from Faker. He was up 20 about 10 minutes in, knocked down the first turret as well, practically solo. And this was this slow, methodical control. SKT kept getting farther and farther ahead. Rox were tacking on some objectives, and they had the one good comeback, but this was SKT, in a way, playing many of the elements of their game, saying we're going to stay in control the whole time, and largely they were.
Yeah, but we have to question Peanut's early jungle pathing. They're going for an early gank bot lane when River is usually warded, whether you're Elise or not. Then the second phase where they all three went mid failed as well. This is Rox Tigers looking very jittery on stage. Maybe the game one warm-up combined with the fact that they had mini comebacks within the game will make for a much better early game for them in game two. I can easily see them sweeping the early game and taking the tie, honestly.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be an incredibly close series. That was only game one of maybe up to 5. It's going to be beautiful. Stick with it. But for now, let's toss it down to the analyst to break that one a little bit more.